Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down to the campfire for this short rest with me and my friend Peter. D&D with me. Beer, 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 beer. How you doing, buddy? It's good to have you here. It's so good to have you here. It's been a while since we met back in Gen Con, I believe it was that we met, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, life changed. Life happened between life then
happens. Yeah. Busy.
Literally.
Busy. Yeah, literally life happened. Yeah, you made new life between now and then. It's a good excuse to be busy. I think it's. Yeah. I think if we were playing Family Feud and it was like top reasons to be busy, I think it'd be the top answer having a new one. Yeah.
Let me see a kid. Just ding, number one.
Bing, and the arrows and whatever. Sorry. Careful cantrips in the chat. So I should say Family Fooed, not Family Feud.
Yeah, Fooed. Yes, absolutely.
So welcome on, Peter. For anyone from my audience who doesn't know who you are, hasn't seen your beautiful face, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Peter from D&D with me. I'm the dungeon master / storyteller, world builder, home brewer. I pull a lot of strings over at D&D with me, and we, I mostly world build and homebrew over there, and tell a story, I guess, too.
That was the first sort of question I had for you. D&D with me, is that synonymous with you, or is that like a company that you have started and you're like the main guy for it, but you have other people that are also D&D with me?
And that's a funny thing you bring that up there, Rob, because we're actually reevaluating that in the new year. A rebrand is coming, but at the start, at the start of the pandemic, it was very much D&D with me, Peter, right? And then we brought on a live play, and then stuff kind of started growing from there. So I was like, you know what? It's weird ending a stream saying you can talk D&D with if you can't talk D&D with anybody, you can always talk D&D with me. And then I'm like, and then these other people here. You can talk with
me, and you just have to rebrand it as D&D with me and them.
And them, yeah. Or D&D with we.
D&D with we. You can talk D&D with us. D&D with us could work, because you say that because I went and watched some of your stuff in prep for this to make sure that I actually knew what it is you do, and I saw that sort of sign off. If you can't talk D&D with anyone, you can talk D&D with me, and I was like, I like that. I like little snappy. You can't do that. You can't do that when your brand is just your name. And be like, and remember, Robert Hartley GM.
You can always rob with Hartley or something like that. I don't know. Actually, it was shout out to Mendari. Mendari too is like, you need to have the raid notification being it's D&D with me, but now it was D&D with me. Now it's D&D with you, and it's such a good raid notification that during this rebrand, it's tough. It's tough to figure out what we're gonna do, because that's a big thing. But I also mess it up every time too. It's they always chirp me at the end of the show.
so I like to. That is a perfect on ramp to talk about like the name and where it came from. But before I forget, I do like to start short rest by saying, if we're having a short rest, it implies that we are on some sort of a quest, some sort of a mission. What are we, like, DM with me for a second? What are we on the middle of that required a short rest? What sort of a quest?
We are currently we've been hired by an opposing town to deliver a secret payload that is masked as a shipment of goods and whatnot but it's actually filled with gnome spies, and we're bringing them into the town. Yeah, we're Trojan horsing it, but just Trojan boxing it, because we can put probably a bunch of them
Trojan
in there.
box, yeah, just a bunch of you can stuff them in. Gnomes don't complain, not like them halflings. You can just chuck as many in as you can fit into a crate. They're all upside down, stuffed into each other, boots in the face.
That's a mathematic problem right there.
Yeah.
How many
it's
can
like
you
Tetris
put in a box? Yeah.
you got to line them all up ahead of time and be like, what shapes roughly are each of them? This guy's heavy, so we'll put him in first. This guy's smaller. We'll cast reduce on that guy so you can fit him into the gaps.
You really could, but you could also have you could always have the mansion in there too, so you could put more in there as many. or teleportation sigil in there as well.
How long can they? Because I know Bag of Holding can only hold a creature for 10 minutes divided by the number of people in it, so that's not a good idea. But does Portable Hole have the same restriction of breathing? I can't remember.
You know what?
Because you could fit a lot into a 10-foot diameter portable hole.
Yeah, everyone one at a time. Let's go.
Come on.
I don't know. Yeah. I feel like it probably has the same amount of time, or an hour. It's weird. Do you notice that like a lot of D&D has like an hour or like an hour wait time, and it's just always so that's the default. I always say it's an hour. It's fine.
I've kind of wondered. I haven't gotten to this point in my world building yet, but I've always kind of been tempted to put some sort of law reason for that, like the god of magic or something is just a super fan of an hour and 8 hours as periods, and that's why spells are only ever a minute, 10 minutes, an hour, or 8 hours, and they're like, nah, nothing in between. You can't have a 4-hour spell. You can't have a 30-minute spell. I'm not the god of magic's like, I refuse.
He's definitely got glasses down here. He's just like, that's ridiculous. No.
What do you mean? What do you mean you're on a 12-minute spell? No, that's not. It's not happening.
I can't count like that.
You have 4 time zones in this world.
Yeah.
So we're bringing a bunch of gnomes into the town. We're smuggling gnomes into the town, and we're just the faces to be like, we're just delivering things. We're going to market. What are we eating and drinking on this short rest? So that's the quest we're on. Are we just like, have we just paused on the way to the town to pull off to the side of the road and just have a short rest?
I think, for you and I, we were like, it's getting a little rainy, there's fog, and the path is getting a little washed out, and we have to. It's more of a necessity. So like we sat down, we have a little lean-to. Can't
keep going, or we'll suffer a level of exhaustion or something.
Exactly, exactly.
We'll stop and have a short rest till the rain clears, and all the gnomes are starting to get etsy in the back of the...
we let them out to stretch their legs. They're all they're all like smoking by the box, just like, hey, how you doing? Yeah.
I don't know, but I had someone's butt in my face. Was it you? I don't know. I had a feeling it was my own somehow.
It wasn't me.
They're just talking back and forth with each other like that.
Yeah, why you still got your sidearm on? Like it was jabbing me in the ribs the whole time. Yeah.
Oh, the safety's on. It's fine.
How do you put a safety on a short sword, you idiot?
You put a stick on it.
just like a marshmallow stuck to the end of his short sword so he doesn't poke him. So that's our short rest. That's what we've set up. Let's get back to the name. D&D with me. How did that begin? Mm-hmm. Why did you choose that?
It's funny because I obviously this started kind of during the pandemic, and I was like, I want to talk about my DMing style and like my world building and whatnot, and I couldn't figure out a name. And I remember specifically I was at my I was visiting my parents, and my brother was visiting as well, and we were and my brother's a big nerd as well, and we were all like, I was like floating in a pool, and I'm like, I gotta figure out a name, and I'm like, but I kind of want it. And the whole premise of it is, I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but in Canada we had a lot of really cheesy TV shows that all like rhymed, and they were all like poppy, and that's where the whole like 80s theme, 90s theme comes out of, the neon. There was this specific group TV show, and it's blanking right now, but there are these guys in like large sequin wigs, and I'm like, I want something that's like super cheesy like that, and where it could almost be borderline kids show. And I'm like, but it's gotta rhyme. And I was like, D&D, and I remember my brother saying something to my mother, going like, oh, I don't know about me. And I was like, D&D with me. There we go. And that's how it started, right? But the whole premise behind it was like this kind of cheesy kids show, 90s show, where like almost like in Canada we had something called Body Break. And it was these Joanne McLeod and I forget the other guy, but they were like this like athletic family that always wore like cross trainers, and they're like lycra suits, and they're all like, let's get moving everybody. And I'm like, that's the vibe I want to go with, at least.
So then,
and we've diverged.
Yes, I was going to say. So then, what happened? Because I'm not seeing sequin wigs and lycra bodysuits on D&D.
Well, there's two things, Rob. A, that's expensive, and B, I don't know if anyone wants to see me in spandex. Let's be honest. So no, it was just the theme in itself that kind of jumped out from there. The 80s and 90s theme. I mean, I was a 90s kid growing up, and then I loved that stuff, and it's a big nostalgic thing too right now.
Yeah, for sure. So when you were starting out, what made you want to begin the content creation anyway? Like before you even came up with the name, why did you know you wanted to do something?
Well, for me, it was I had DM'd for a bit, and I remember building this whole world, and I had friends coming to me during the pandemic because everyone was picking up like D&D and TTRPG at the time, and they're like, "Well, how did you go about building this?" And it became a point of, oh, well, maybe I just should just make videos and be like, hey, I made a video on this, check this out, right? And it grew past that, and obviously it grew into a live play and whatnot. But the world itself, I was gonna plan to do like a big sort of overview of my world, and it eventually it gets in there in bits and pieces. But at first, it was just like, this is how I DM, and this is how I organize my game, and this is how I build my first town, and making NPCs or villains like memorable and usable essentially. So that's where it kind of started out from.
And how long was it before you realized it wasn't going to be this kind of kitschy kids show cheesy thing?
Well, when I started doing the videos, and I honestly cringe going back and looking at some of the videos, because it's just like me standing like, hello everybody, this is this, and I didn't have any like sort of stage presence, as you would say. And I realized that I was doing these, but I wasn't showing it in practice, and I had an offer at the time to kind of start DMing on one show, and that's what kind of threw me into the world that we have here in this little community. Is I got brought in there, and I was asked to DM, and I was still doing my D&D with me stuff on the side, and then that kind of fell to the wayside, and I was now focusing on just DMing and telling a story full time. And you could see there was a period where I made like a few videos, and then I went back to having a full live play on our channel. But that was because we continued it from, unfortunately that one kind of fell to the wayside, and then I picked it up with a few other folks and brought them in to kind of do a year jump for the new story. So that's mainly where it went, because the idea was I wanted to reference what I was doing as a DM on those videos that I was teaching folks. And you see me do it a little bit, but I haven't brought it past that, because now I'm really just focusing on the world building and the storytelling, and that's really what's gotten me. And I think it's good to have a shift and always change things around, at least, right?
Yeah, to keep things up to date with what your current interests are and your current passions and stuff, so that you're still making stuff you're passionate about. And just to reevaluate, even if you don't to not focus on having to shift and rebrand and change things, because that's sort of assuming the end result of it being like this. Just to make sure that you're assessing, and if you assess and realize you need a brand shift or a change in tempo or a change in stuff you're making, then that's fine. But if you assess and go, I'm actually really enjoying what I'm doing still, and keep going how I'm doing it, then that's also important. So let's go back even further to like early days. When did you first get into TTRPGs in general? Like what was your first introduction to D&D, and before that into like gaming in general?
Well, gaming was, when we're talking about like tabletop gaming or even just gaming as video gaming and stuff. Now, it was very like encouraged in my house to be creative. My dad was a drummer and a musician, and my mom was like an interior decorator, and it was always encouraged to be like, all right, tell a story while you're doing stuff too. And my dad always was a showman and really wanted you to kind of go through that. And so I remember playing board games and stuff with him. But then where I really got into TTRPGs was I went to school college for video game design. Actually, I was a environment modeler, just a few things here in Toronto. And I remember we had an assignment where it's like, okay, learn about something else other than video games, but in the gaming sphere. And I started looking up D&D because I remember watching the terrible D&D movie when I was a kid, going to the comic book shop, seeing the 3rd edition books and being like, oh, what is that? Like, so I threw myself into 4th edition, and then I was like, I kind of want to play. And that's where I started getting into it. And that like 4th edition, it was just before the play test for 5e.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe a year or two before that. And that's when I was just as a player.
2012, 2013, somewhere around there.
That's exactly it. Right. And I just fell in love with the ability to tell your story. Like, I can still remember playing a game and like having the most tense moment. It wasn't even me. It was my brother running in and his cleric nearly dying, and rolling a nat 20 on the final death save, and the whole room just erupting.
Yeah.
And like that energy that you feel, oh my God, it's like
it's so intoxicating, right?
Oh my God. And then, I remember as a dwarf, I was challenging this goblin to one-on-one combat, and it was just like, to me, it was the most like groundbreaking thing. And then eventually from there, took a break for a while, and shout out to Critical Role when Critical Role is due, and like campaign 1 was just finished, and I was like, I want to play again. And my partner and a bunch of our friends, they're like, I want to play too. Yeah. So guess who had the DM? Because I was the only one that knew how to play, right? And it hasn't changed since then.
Nice, yeah. So you kind of got thrust into the role. Do you enjoy DMing more than playing, or do you enjoy it just for different reasons? Like, is there one that you prefer over another?
It's sad to say, but like more lately, I've been getting more opportunities to play a character. But I really do love being able to do some voices and be a different character all the time, and kind of have this overarching story. I'm a very like cinematic storyteller.
Yeah, same.
And I love chewing the moments and like doing the build up to a big moment. I don't know what it's like on the other side, because I haven't been a long-term character. I've only been like one-shot characters, right? And but when you're a DM and everything's finally coming together, Rob, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like, oh my God, it's perfect.
It takes a lot of patience to, like, there's like an inverse, like a direct response, actually, like a direct relation between like how long something's taken to pay off and how satisfying it can feel when it does. Like I've set things up that have paid off like six real life years later. Like character things when they first started making their characters in one of my home games, and I saw something similar in their backstories. So I was like, oh, actually, I'm gonna have her biological father her biological mother is the sister of his biological father, and his father's went missing, and he went on a quest to go find his father, and her mother died in childbirth, so she never knew her, and like the fact that his father's sister died for reasons was the inciting event to make him leave his family and go off on a quest. So like when he's like, my father left when I was only 6 and I don't know why, and it's like, it's because his sister had just died in childbirth, and so he left her. And so like they didn't know that, and literally 6 years later they finally, like, something happened, then they finally found out that they've been first cousins the whole time, like 2 of the party members. It's just like payoffs like that are amazing. The stuff that I've been setting up with the Viva La Dirt League guys, because I didn't actually mention at the start, if you're here from Peter's community and you don't know who I am, I'm most well known for being the DM for a comedy group called Viva La Dirt League, over at Viva La Dirt League D&D. And the campaign we've been running there is like half-hour comedy episodes each week, and we're up to like episode 170 now. We've been going for about 3 or 4 years with it. And there's things I set up in episode 1 that are going to pay off in like the final battle with the big boss that they're coming up to sometime later this year, maybe, or next year. And I'm just been sitting on them for like 4-5 years sometimes. And the delicious things are when the players like get real close to discovering it, like during game, and you're like, they weren't meant to know that yet, but they're heading towards it, and you're like, oh my God, they're gonna find out that big thing that I've been setting up, and they're gonna find out sooner than I expected. This is awesome, this is exciting. And then they like talk themselves out of it or something, and they just go off in a different direction, or they pick up on the wrong thing, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be delicious when we finally when they can look back and go, oh my God, we went past that town and we decided not to stop in. And I'm like, yep. And if you had,
I'm very much like a cause and effect as well. Like I like to present 2 paths, and it's like, oh well, you got to get a map for this. In the Crystal Arc, we talk about you have to get a map for these magical ley lines to kind of see where this crystal lich is putting everything around, or you can go talk to the guy who has a list of people's names. His name was listed on a note. And it was like Harville Inktalon.
Right.
And they're like, or the map, and they're like, okay, what do we do? And I'm like, well, if they go the Harville Inktalon route, like there's going to be an assassination attempt.
Right.
Or if they go this way, the map, like they're gonna run into like someone's brother.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but if they go Harville, it's gonna be kind of boring. Which it wasn't, admittedly. They eventually went to go visit him, but they went and took the map, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna see the dead brother, the guy who's supposed to be the dead brother. And then they're like, wait, what a second, what? And like the brother, you find out from the guy who's giving him the quest is like, who owns the family crypt, was like, we kind of kicked my brother out because he was a part of this like weird sect of sorcerers. And it was like it was such a good payoff, because I remember the ending was, did my brother send you, that episode? Everyone's like, what? Yeah. And they had to think, they're like, oh my god,
but the brother's dead. Wait, he's not. That implies what? Yeah, that's great. I love that stuff, and I love the idea, the implication that you made of that, like you try and give people like two branching paths. Essentially, it feels much more like a choose your own ending book at that point. Like it's easier on the dungeon master to not have to try and prepare infinite possibilities by setting out for the players, like, look, you've got two choices of a way to solve this. And obviously, good dungeon master like yourself, you like, if the players suddenly came up with a third option that you hadn't thought of, you'd probably go with it and be like, all right, let's improvise that and try and make that work. But you've ultimately you've had time to prepare two different options, so it still feels like they've got options, they've got their player agency, but it's not. It's a nice balance between like the railroad and the sandbox. And I think too many people talk about railroad as if it's like a dirty word, as if it's like a bad thing, and you need to avoid that as much as you can to go as far the other way as you can and make it an entire like Breath of the Wild open world situation where you can do anything and go anywhere. But too often, if you go too far the other way into too much sandbox and open world, your players feel no call to action. They feel like we're just kind of wandering the world and I don't know where to go and I don't know what's happening, because the DM is too scared to put any kind of plot and like drive us towards a thing. So I like the idea that you're kind of preparing. Is that sort of how you handle most of your encounter preparations? You think about like two different ways for them to solve it?
I do now, because it bit me in the ass before, and I remember them being like, it was in the previous channel show, and they're like, I don't want to travel, and I was like, they were rolling on the encounter table, and there was funny events and stuff that happened, but they're like, when are we going to get to the plot? And I was like, oh damn, you know what? Right. Like, that's a good point. And then I started. I do have the branching paths, but I do have a cause and effect as well, though. And the cause and effect itself is like, well, if you go down this path, this is going to happen now. So I have a whole living document, and it's called What's Happening Elsewhere. So they saved a group of Grung from the attacking Yuan Ti. Yeah. But they didn't save the town that was asking for their help because they didn't like the Dragonborn society that was there. So, because they wouldn't pay. So what happened then? Well, they sustained major casualties. The king that they really liked died, because he was defending his last breath there. And I love having some cause and effect there, because they met this dude along the path. He was kind of like he was based on like Livingston, I presume, kind of thing, like a very like cheesy explorer, like it's frightening. So he ended up kind of being like, I actually saved them, because they didn't go back and like they didn't go back to get the reward or any help or anything like that. So this guy took all the thing, and they like randomly were like reading the newspaper a couple episodes later, and it says Burgess Livingston versus the Yuan Ti coming soon to the library. And they're like, what? We did that story. We saved him. And Burgess Livingston is like this bumbling idiot who will take any chance to kind of get the Indiana Jones style. Yes, exactly, right? Like, he wants to be the Indiana Jones, but he's incapable of it. But that's because they didn't go back to the town, and they didn't explore that path. But the other path would have gotten messed up as well. And I like having those, because when you plan that stuff out, you can say, all right, by the end of this episode, you have to make a decision, or by the end of the session, you have to make a decision on where you're going. You don't tell them that, but that's where the conclusion comes to. Yeah. and then you can be like, all right, they're gonna end up just on this path before we finish the session.
So that they're going to be in this town. Prepare next time. Yeah, it's exactly very difficult as a dungeon master to leave a session on like an entire cliffhanger of like, oh, you've got to go left, right, straight forward, or back the way you came, and then you end it there, and then you go, ah, shit, I shouldn't have ended it there because now I don't know which path they're actually going to go. You end the session on getting to a big cliffhanger, and then choosing which way you're going to go, and then you're going to go right. Okay, now we end the session so that I know which thing to prepare for next time.
Exactly. And but if I can get the vibe at the table that they're like, look, we don't want to kind of do main quest, they'll actually talk to themselves. I introduced someone's grandfather that was estranged from them, and he was very mean, and they kind of found out that the guy's mother was being held at the house without being able to let it go, and they were supposed to go bring the map back to this place, meet with the guy, and they're like, no, let's go save my mom. And I was like, all right, this is now off the rails. Let's go and let's try and do this. And it was all improv from then. Honestly, one of my favorite episodes and most recent thought.
It's one of those things that's like, no matter how many times I am subject to that same situation where I'm thrust into improvising something, and no matter how many times I come out of it going, that was incredible, that was so much fun, I never then trust myself that it's like, hey, it's okay to do that. Then I'm like, yeah, but that was a fluke. I need to prepare everything in future. I need to make sure that I'm prepared. I'm more prepared. I take away the wrong message from it entirely. Like, I need to be more prepared so that I never have to improvise it like that again.
You lay in bed awake after it. You're like, oh God, that's not that. How did that happen? Right?
How do I then make sure that all of the stuff that I improvised is now canon to the world, and I actually make note of it somewhere so that I can remember everything that happened?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You have to I spent an hour after the session just writing down notes and being like, okay, this is the town I made up and the places, and they're like, oh, they're very like religious and stuff. Anyways, yeah, I get
especially if they don't realize during that you are improvising it, and so they think that you're putting in plot points and stuff, and like, oh, there was a clue here. He said the way that he described the tavern, blah blah blah. It's like, I described the tavern, just the first words that will come into my mind. I was just stream of consciousness describing this tavern and the people that ran it, because I had nothing.
But that's the importance of notes, though, because like when they were like, oh, I want to go back here, I remembered in my home game we had, and the person that was kind of running the inn at the time was actually one of our previous players. Her character had retired and become Madame Mirage, owning like a little brothel kind of thing. And she's like, and they're like, well, we got to figure out how to get there and save my mom. And I was like, boom. She's like, I have a guy over there named Rusty. And he kind of does, he does some stuff on the lowdown for me. And they're like, what? After an insight check, it's like, oh, he sells like illicit something we call gnome dust. It was like a little, nice. And Medusa, which is a male supplement, let's just say, and
makes you rock hard.
There you go. Use that, folks.
I like that, Medusa.
Yeah.
Are you losing a little bit of granite in your in your stone? Yeah.
Yeah. And then they went there, and like and Rusty was there, and he's like, yeah, I can get you in the place, no problem. And then they just kind of, I had to improvise from there. That was it.
Yeah, I love that.
But the importance of notes, I was like, okay, let me look back. I was like, all right, we got this person here, let's just use Rusty. And Rusty's a funny little character that they can deal with, right?
Yeah. And if you chuck like and like there's you get to know with experience as Dungeon Master, you get to know certain like stalling techniques when you are thrust into like a complete unknown where you're improvising everything. You can be like, I can throw a character, like I know my players, these particular players, well enough to know if I throw a character with a funny voice that is a little ditzy at them, they'll absolutely love it, and they'll just role play with that guy for like 20 minutes. Meanwhile, like you're role playing as that guy, but there's another section of your brain that's turned on going, we need to build a town. There's just fucking building in the background. It's just like, keep talking. And there's like, I can imagine like a sketch of this, like Rusty's at the front of the town, like they're about to walk into the town, but the town guard that they've met is just like hey, how are you doing? Where are you staying in town? And he's just like role playing, like completely stalling them, trying to like get their attention and be like, don't look past me, look at me, look at me.
Building in the sets,
and then everybody else is like, walls. in the background, people are bringing in like cardboard walls. Come on, we need to build something. Give the town some sort of a hook
to do, though.
I reckon,
inside the dungeon master's head, just like people bringing in like ropes, pulling in things. That'd be hilarious.
I might make a note to add that into D&D Logic season 3.
Do it.
Yeah, funny. Yeah. So to go back to the consequences thing, you say like you like to have actions through consequences. I love to do the same thing because we're sort of birds of a feather there. Like I feel like it helps to create this living world, this really sort of 3-dimensional. This like if we choose A, then we're not choosing B, C, D, and so they continue without us. The benefit of that I find is like if they're at level 1 and I give them a quest to like slay some rats or a quest to go kill some kobolds, and they choose to kill the kobolds, then by the time they get back to the village, the rats have infested more than just the tavern. Then like they've grown into giant rats or mutated rats or like cranium rats or something.
Were-rats.
And so, were-rats, yeah. And so like the problems that they don't deal with end up still being like level appropriate because they're leveling up doing this other thing, and the problems are leveling up doing this thing. I had that in a game once where like they could have killed a couple of undead, but they chose to ignore it, and so the undead became this larger undead army, and so by the time they finally came back to it, they were like, oh, there's an entire like necromancer arc now where there's an entire undead thing, and I had them deal with that in one of my home games. But one of the problems, one of the sort of not problems, but one of the dangers, one of the pitfalls there that you got to be aware of, and I want to know how you deal with this, is the feeling that you can then imbue your players with of hopelessness, or anything they do doesn't matter because they're putting out this little fire, but you've just continued these other 7 fires, and the world is continuing, and the consequences of not choosing what they're choosing is getting worse, and so they're like, I just like to feel like a hero that's putting out more fires than is starting. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's tough, right? Because you and I both know like stuff is going on behind the scenes that you and I are looking at every part of the world, and they're just hyper focused on this little part, what they're doing right now. But in my mind, if they're not asking about it, they don't know about it, right? But if they do ask about it and like, oh, they got attacked, usually if it's been enough time between sessions and been enough days, the conflict has been resolved by someone else, the local guard or some other heroes and stuff. Because that's another thing I find. There are like your ultimate heroes, your players. I think if you're going for a big world-saving arc, they are the ultimate heroes, right? Yeah. But there are other people like them. I have an adventurers guild that people come in and go and grab stuff from, and like they're people who will do things that you're not going to do, but you have a chance to run into adversaries, or you have a chance to run into the guard who's dealing with all this stuff. So eventually those loose ends will be tied. But I like to tell a story. They're like, well, we were attacked, and then maybe they'll feel some guilt, but like these heroes came in, right? Yeah. If they look into it a little bit further.
I love I don't use it much because it kind of depends on the party and the sort of people that they are, but I do think that some parties really respond well to having a rival, or like a rival group, like a group of other heroes. So not villains, not even anti-heroes, just like a group of rivals that are doing the same quest essentially, and they're a good driving force as well, because if your players are like completely just dossing about and doing like the fun roleplay things of like, oh, there's a carnival, let's play all of the games at that, and they do that for one session, and then the next session they're like, let's just do more of that, and then the next session they're like, oh, and now I want to take some downtime to learn Goblin, and they're doing too much, and you're like, if you introduce the fact that, hey, there's your rival party, these people that you hate because they're always taking your glory, they're also arriving in town now, and they're gonna go on this quest, and then that can really spur certain people to be like, all right, let's do it. Let's get back on main quest. Let's get back on the rails.
One of my previous party players, they had they were from an island, and there was like 4 competing families there, and one of them said that they made the best rum, and the other family said they made the best rum. Right. So they met a adventuring party in there, and just so happened that person also is a bard, and the player was a bard, and they're both they walk in and he's playing like a guitar, and then he goes, oh, he's like, I heard your name, I'm this person, and then he pulls out a thing of like his Firebrand rum, and they're like, he's like, where the where the hell are you from? and, like, and that's where I love just putting those little incidents in, because it doesn't have to be something epic. Yeah. Okay, what kind of rum is that? Oh, I'm not gonna tell you.
Nice. I love that. So it's handy that you came from like a background of nerds, essentially nerds and creatives, that you got into gaming and such from an early one. What was do you remember the first? You said it was D&D 4E that you played first time.
Yep.
Do you remember the first character that you were playing in that?
Absolutely, and it's funny because actually the artist for our show who does all of our paintings. He's a good friend of mine, and he for Halloween, my birthday, he painted a picture of me as a dwarf, and that dwarf is Thodalir Tingorin, the dwarven fighter who fought and bested the goblin chieftain. I remember him to this day. It is so
sounds like it. I love it. I can see you just like putting back on his like introduction hat whenever he'd meet NPCs, and he'd obviously give all of that. I'm so the dwarven fighter.
Thodalir Tingorin, how you doing? Like he's from a family of smiths, and it's a simple story. His father's schematic was stolen for this like really rare set of armor, and he was looking for people like that. So, and that's where.
When you're DMing, do you like people? What sort of level of backstory do you like them to come up with? Something simple like you did with like, I'm looking for my father's schematics. Or do you prefer like something a little more in depth that you can get your teeth into and like create some like story out of, or do you generally have a story already and then try and fit their characters into the story somehow?
Well, like it depends on the level of player, right? If I know you're new to D&D, I'll work with you pretty in depth on your backstory. But if I will kind of say, all right, if you're a seasoned player, I'm like, Rob, if you have a backstory, bring it to me in session 0, and then after you and I might have a one-on-one, we'll rework the story and elements a little bit, not to get rid of your story, but to be like, all right, let's be honest, you didn't kill a dragon at level 1, right? Maybe the dragon saw you and spared you, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe you're telling you can absolutely be telling people you killed a dragon at level 1.
Yes.
Your character could have been like, oh, I scared him off, and
yeah. I played a bard who was a cook, who was just in the right place at the right time, where the sheriff of the town killed a goblin, but he succumbed to his wounds, and I had a sword, and they're like, oh my god, you saved him. So he walked around, I did it, it's fine, everybody, we're all good, right? So it's the Gilderoy Lockhart situation, right? So I do like that, but I will work a little bit on the backstories with them to kind of make a little points here and there, right?
And what sort of inclusion do they have with their backstories in the main quest usually in your games? Like, is it that you just try and have them like have their own little personal side quests that they can choose to go on, or are their backstories like intrinsically linked to the story you're trying to tell usually?
Well, the way I like to I have a general idea of like what I will do for a story, the place, and kind of like the overarching story. But when I say, all right, let's go make our characters come back with the backstory, and if we do a little work here and there, I will actually try and say, all right, you know what, that person would be great here. And, our Rangers characters from a tribe called the Bloodhand tribe, and they're at odds with the Komodon dynasty, which is the Dragonborn people here, and they're trying to keep their land, and they're trying to encroach in. But at this time, there's also this big thing that's happening, so they're eventually going to have to band together to fight that thing. So there is little side stories, but every now and then I can't link everything. We can't link everything in there, but we can link as much as we can.
And if you try to link everything, you're also falling into another trap. Like you're falling into the trap that comes from like the later Star Wars movies, where it's like everything's connected, and we need to know about where every single thing came from. And you see some sort of prequel movie where it's talking about Han Solo's background, and in the background you can see C-3PO was always there the whole time. It's like not everything has to be connected. She doesn't have to be Palpatine's granddaughter, for fuck's sake. Like,
don't it,
like
Rob?
It was so much of a better story when you just left it as her parents were nobodies, because that's telling people anybody can be a Jedi, anybody can have the potential to be a hero. You don't have to be from some sort of super lineage in order to be there's not only 3 families in the entire universe that are important. you can branch out. You don't have to have everything connected. Not that I'm
so
salty about this at all and can rant about it for days.
I remember watching that and being like, It's funny though, because you went to Han Solo. I was gonna be like, yeah, you're watching a Star Wars movie and you see Han Solo's jacket in the background, and you're like, oh my God, Han Solo. But it's funny because I put in characters from my own old games, right? But I don't point it out and be like, this was an old hero from them. Like, they're just a character.
Yeah.
And they're there. And if my friends have been watching and they're like, oh my God, you put my character in there. I have my partner's character in there, and she helped them kind of sneak into somewhere. No one knows that. And I mean, now they do.
Yeah.
But my partner was like, oh, I felt so good to see that Finney was doing something else after this, right. And that gives me a little bit more. It's not like I'm trying to be like, hey guys, check this out, this character's gonna be
check it out,
right?
Look at this.
Look how good I am.
We now know where Han Solo's fluffy dice came from in the Millennium Falcon, because that was the story that
he shaved Chewbacca.
Yeah, no, I like that, because that's the stuff that makes it feel like, oh, it is a connected world. Those, you do need some of those connections to be like, this is an MCU. This is an entire universe where several different stories are happening at the same time. But it just doesn't need to have every single thing connected to every other little thing, and it's exhausting to try and do that, and it kind of makes things feel like, come on, like let's not have it so incestuous with all of the different everything. So what were we discussing before? We were saying, like, so you got into it. That was your character, your consequences. Yeah, your character in 4th edition. How long were you playing 4th edition before you started moving on to 5th? And what did you think of 4th edition?
So obviously everyone talks about that as being the edition to not be named. I think it was a little crunchy. One of my players will say it was a great addition, but I think it was a little much for what I wanted out of a game. Right. Everything had a role. Everything had plus or minuses. It for me, it was a little too number crunchy. But was it a great introduction to D&D? Absolutely. Do I like 5e more? For sure. But I played 4e for about 3 years before the playtest came out. So D&D Next came out, and I remember when we were picking up another campaign, we started with D&D Next, and that campaign fell apart, and then I started playing 5e after that with our home games.
So you switched to 5e almost immediately, just been like, oh, they've fixed a bunch of the crunch. Let's.
Well, and at the same time too, a lot of it was a barrier to entry for costs. We were college students. We didn't have a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
Whoa, D&D Next playtest. You can just get the PDF and you can learn how to play there. So it actually came out of like financial necessity at this point, right? We were like, oh wait, everyone can now get their own books and their own characters. This is great. And then we don't have to pass around books and all this stuff anymore. But like everyone printed out their own PDFs.
Nice. So your players at the time, was that just people, just your friends? Did you find like a group through like a gaming store or something, or did you bump into people at nerd conventions or something? How did you get to know your fellow community?
So 4E, I was playing with. I was a player, and I was playing with all kind of people from my college and my brother and a friend I had brought in. And from there, when I played 5e again as a DM, I brought in, well, I recruited a lot of my friends, like Simon, who does all of our art for the show, my partner, his partner, and a few of our other friends as well in there. So they were all eager to play. And they all wanted to play. You
didn't have to rope anybody in. You didn't have to persuade them. You didn't have to like tie them down.
Well, one person. I'm not going to name names, but I had to rope one of them in. But it's funny. I didn't go to conventions really until I started dating my now partner. Right, like she was doing cosplay, and she's a bigger nerd than I when it comes to comic books. And then I was like, I've never been to a convention. She's like, well, you got to come. And I loved it, and like obviously going to Gen Con was fantastic, and I hadn't really gotten into that whole community until after after I started DMing.
So your wife, your now wife partner, was a nerd before meeting you and getting into D&D stuff?
Oh yeah, okay. Just to kind of give you a picture, you go into my in-laws' house. There is a picture of like the family. It's really nice. And then in the middle is a picture of her brothers and her and Stan Lee. Like it's a part of the family.
Oh, shit. That's brilliant. To be fair, you would, wouldn't you? You'd absolutely.
I would
put that in.
We met him. He was fantastic. I actually have a Wolverine #1 with like a signed by him, and it's like a 9.5 rating. And like, we've been absolutely like, I think one of our like our engagement gifts, I got like I'm looking at it right now because it's like my favorite thing. Hellboy's my favorite character, and it's a drawn. Right. It's a drawing of Hellboy from Mike Mignola, all done up and everything, and everything around here that you don't really see is like paintings or comic cells from cells from like the TMNT show or the X-Men TV show and stuff like that. We're big nerds, but it's got to stay in the basement.
Makes sense, I guess. That's fortuitous when you can find somebody that you can gel with so much on such passions and stuff. Have you ever seeing that Hellboy was one of your favorites? Have you ever done like a Hellboy D&D crossover thing? You ever tried to run like a Hellboy setting, maybe even for like a one shot or something?
Well, it came close because I wouldn't do it like in a Hellboy setting. I would do it kind of like in the same theme. So I like Hellboy has at least the first arc or the first story really has a big influence on Irish folklore. And I really like the ideas of their oh my God, there was a Nimue, the Blood Queen, and all that stuff. Like, I would probably focus as you're working alongside the BPRD. I haven't yet, which that's a great idea though, Rob. I like that because you have like already a built-in world, and you can come in as a character.
Some of those are like already you've already got like the homebrew and the world building. So a huge way of it's already been done for you, and then you just need to find a story you want to tell within it. It's one of the things that I've done to try and like bring other people into the TTRPG hobby, people who might dismiss D&D as being like fantasy and they're not interested in fantasy, and I tried to introduce people via other things. Like my now ex, at the time, she was a huge fan of the TV series The Good Place. And she wasn't a fan of like fantasy and stuff, and so I was doing D&D as a career by that point, and so I was kind of like, you should at least know what it is that I do. Like, I'll run a game for you. And she was like, I don't know about that, and I was like, no, trust me, you'll enjoy it. So for like I think it was for our anniversary or something, I told her, just get a bunch of your friends together, people that you'd like to just hang out with and have fun anyway, and we'll make Good Place characters. And because I was like, a Good Place is a good one because it's comedy, so it's lighthearted, they can do that sort of wacky stuff and not worry about consequences too much. It's also like, because it's set in the afterlife, there's like elements of monsters. You see some demons and things in the show. There's also like magical elements of like Janet can pretty much do anything she wants, kind of stuff. And so I was like, you can either play a character that exists or you can make someone new, and we'll run something. And I just ran a Good Place one shot and showed the sort of the draw and the benefits of TTRPGs in general. And I think it's a great way of entering into the world for new people, especially, to just be like, hey, you know the world of Batman really well? Okay, let's run you a Batman one shot.
Yeah, like on the flip side of that, like my nephew had come by, and he comes down in the basement because it's like nerdy stuff down here, and he loves monsters. And he was going through my D&D books and pulls out the monster manual. He's like, and he's 7 years old. He's like, can I go through this? I'm like, absolutely. He's like, what are all these things? So I'm explaining to him, and I'm like, here we go.
Yeah. Right? We're getting him. He's hooked.
And I'm like, fishing. You can fight these things. You can fight these things if you want, right? And he's like, what? I can fight them? I'm like, which one do you want to fight? And he's like, oh, and obviously he's on the lich. He's like, I want to fight a lich. I'm like, homie, you're gonna die. But anyways, I will destroy you.
You're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun dying.
Yeah. So I gave him a like one of our D20s,
like full power gamer. You're like optimizing. You're like, all right, here we go. The lich is gonna use his legendary action to do this, and then he's gonna
disintegrate. You're done. Next time, try something smaller. But
try how to noob.
Yeah. Slam the book down. So I said to him, I was like, okay, this is the number. I showed him the armor class. I said, this is the number you need to beat. You need to get this number or higher. And you add a +1 to every time you swing your weapon, right? And I'm like, what are you? He's like, I'm a mage. Like, perfect, cool. I'm like, what do you have? He's like, I have blue flames. He's, kids are really interesting when they have like their own, like, creative, yeah. So I was like, you have to hit him 3 times, but he can also hit you 3 times. If he hits you 3 times, your character's dead. If you hit him 3 times, he's dead. And that's when he was hooked. Every now and then,
Yeah.
every time I go visit, he's like, "Can you bring the book?" That's how he knows how to play, right? So you're right, though. It's finding things where your player base is interested in. So when I did my first home game as a DM, I knew that everybody liked, you know, my partner and her friend. They both liked hippogriffs, so I did it. I incorporated hippogriffs. Unfortunately, the hippogriff died. We don't have to talk about it. There was tears at the table. But did it feed my soul as like, oh my god, this is an emotional, like, it showed me that D&D can be more than just a game, right? When people are like, and you're playing sad music and the atmosphere is there, and they got an egg. They found an egg. They saved the egg. Doug is the hippogriffs there. So they have Doug the hippogriff in the town, and he was actually in our live play as a someone to save someone. So it's fun that way, and you got to find common ground to bring them in.
Oh, for sure. We have a very similar story where I'm kind of estranged from my the rest of my extended family by distance, because I'm in New Zealand and most of my family are in the UK still. My two older brothers and by extension my brother's family. So one of them has 3 kids, and so I've got 2 nephews and a niece that I've barely know anything about really. I see them on videos that my brother sends me, and that's pretty much it. I'm going back later this year to meet them, but I was on a video chat with them a couple of years ago, and this the oldest of the nephews, who's now like 9, at the time was about 7. He and I didn't really have anything in common. Like, what do you talk about with a 7-year-old that you don't really know? Does he even remember me? Like, does he know who I am? Kind of thing. We're pretty sure he's on the autism spectrum, probably like myself, to be honest, if I'm fully self-reflective. But he like me has an incredible head for numbers, facts, figures, that sort of thing. He's memorized all the flags of the world. By the age of like 3 or 4, he could count backwards from 100, which you're not able to. Wow. You're not meant to be able to do until you're like 8 or 9. Like it's like that sort of level of stuff. And so I was talking with him about school and academia and what are you doing with this and that and the other, and he goes, I think it was in history or English. He was learning about Greek mythology. And I was like, oh, yeah. What? My eyes went wide. I was like, oh, okay, what are you learning about? Who are you learning about? I know everything about it. And I started talking to him about the gods. He mentioned something about, he goes, oh, there's this monster that we just learned about called and he was trying to remember the manticore. And I was like, what? And I ran over to my D&D case and I was like, yeah, this is a manticore. And I came back with monsters and minis. And he was like, oh, is that a manticore? And I was like, yeah, this is a manticore and this is the story behind it. And suddenly we were in and we had the connection and it's like and then at that point I was like, I am going to get you into D&D. That is my vow. I'm making an oath. I will get you into D&D when I get back into England and I meet up with him. I'm just going to take my dice. I'm going to take some minis. I'm going to be like, right, and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to say to my brother, good luck, because I've just given him an expensive hobby, and he's going to demand the books and he's going to demand dice.
At least it's not Warhammer. Okay,
right?
At least it's not Warhammer.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering.
Because that's big in the UK. That's huge in the UK when my brother was there. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So yeah, it's always nice to. It's a good feeling, kind of like a drug dealer. It feels nice when you're getting other people into it. You're like, haha, the first one's free. Yeah. And then they're like, they've got it in their veins.
Yeah, I had like a one-on-one at work, and it was with a new team, and the new team member. It was, they were talking and they were like, okay, look, I know you said you're like a little bit of a nerdy person. That's all I say. Like because they obviously can see the weapons hanging behind because my computer's right here. And they're like, have you played Baldur's Gate? I'm like, okay, all right, you're cool. You're good. And then it's like, yeah, I got another one. And now they're interested in D&D.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. So let's move sort of from up the timeline, as it were. You moved into 5e, you met your partner, you started playing a lot more 5e, running the game because you were the only one who knew how to. At what point, how long were you playing before you decided, let's start making videos about it, let's start actually making like some content?
At that point, I think it was probably about like 6 years into DMing, because I had people coming to me after we play, they would come in for like a guest character in our game, right? And then they'd be like, oh, I'm going to run a game at my place, but I don't really know where to start. Right. And then it was also the pandemic. I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I was like, I used to do video game streaming, but I didn't really enjoy it that much because it was just like it's video game streaming, right? Like I think that you have to be really locked in and sociable while you're playing to make sure you're doing a good game, right? And then I was like, okay, this is gonna be good. We had just gotten into this place, and I'm like, all right, I'm going filming these, and I'm gonna edit them and stuff because I do enjoy the technical process behind it too, making my own intros and doing all the stuff in editing. That was it kind of harkens me back to my old days of what I was doing before, like with not DMing but game design.
Was it on Twitch when you were doing your video game streaming stuff, or was it?
It was. It was on Twitch.
And you started with a different account, just started again from scratch when you.
Same account, but everything got wiped. So there's nothing. I don't think there's anything around. I really hope there's, but it was. I did play a lot of Overwatch, and let's just say I got a little angry at times.
Did you see any sort of growth when you were doing your video game streaming? Like, did you see any numbers?
Only when you did giveaways.
right.
So when you play, so I was playing Black Desert Online, and I'd be like, and there would be the problem is when you do video game streaming, it's either you got to be like on one thing or you got to be variety, and you got to really rely on your personality. Yeah. And at the time, I wasn't personable. Right. I was like, I don't think I had my stage presence ready or anything like that. Like, so it was difficult. You're like, oh, why are you not playing Black Desert? Why are you not playing Overwatch? And so I kind of retired it from then. And then I also felt like I wasn't passionate about it. But then when you talk to me about Dungeons and Dragons, it's literally like life has been breathed into my lungs. I'm like, oh, there we go.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. So you started your DMing online. You started with making videos for YouTube, or you started DMing on Twitch, or?
So when I started DMing, actually it was making stuff for Twitch first, and I was YouTube. I was doing videos, how-tos, sort of how I do my game at home, and I was still playing the home game, but everything was kind of held up because of the pandy. Yeah. And then I was approached and asked if I could DM for another Twitch channel. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go in. And I already had this pre-built world. I was homebrewing my place for my world for about 8 years at that time. So, and this like kind of brought me into overdrive with it. So, and then once that happened, I kind of put the how-to D&D stuff to the side, and then went through there. Nice.
So let's jump to present day then. What's currently the landscape of D&D with me? What is the focus of it at the moment? I know that a couple months ago we had a little baby, so things got put on hold, understandably. But
we finished.
What did that mean for D&D with me in the present day?
So we finished up the arc, and it honestly gave me like a lot of time to reevaluate where I want to be, and the reason that is like now I have a family, I want to spend time with my family, and I got to figure out what that means, but I also don't want to stop doing this because I love this, right? So we finished up our we don't call our campaigns, we call them arcs, right? So we finished up our arc, the Crystal arc was done, and now it was time of reevaluating. That got
to like 24 episodes or so on your YouTube?
24. Yeah, 24 episodes. And
it's a very good start. Which I think I haven't had a chance to watch all of it, but in preparation for this, I did watch some, and it's a very good way to start a campaign. There's some really fantastic artwork on the screen, so you can see the characters immediately right from the. Yeah. You've given everybody like a moment to shine as they're introducing the characters. So you get to know who's going to be playing, who you're going to be following throughout this, because obviously the characters are the story. And it was a good setup.
Well, the two characters, Borok and Cypher, were from the previous campaign. Right. So they had a year's worth of they had some time to prep what they did in the year. We did a time skip. Right. So it's actually funny you bring that up because my artist had to drop this off today.
Nice. And holy shit, that's awesome. Holy shit.
So it's all like it's all oils. I don't think you met him. He was at Gen Con with us, but he was doing a lot of meetings with like the Magic the Gathering artists and stuff. So I don't think you got a chance to meet him. But So yeah, spoiler, he's gonna be joining in and doing like paint nights and stuff on our channel, and then doing being a part of the campaign, because Simon's like one of my best buddies there. But now what's happening? I am finding my footing. I've come back to doing world building on the stream, but now as things are kind of evening, leveling out in the house, I would say I'm ready to go into the next arc, and I've already. You know, one thing about having a baby, Rob, is that sleep depravity brings some crazy ideas. And so, you know, I homebrewed my own race that I would love to kind of introduce and bring alongside the new campaign. The new campaign is going to be taking place in kind of like a druid, I would call it like druid punk centralized place where it's like a druid run society. And so that's what's going on right now, is mostly building that out, getting people on board, getting stuff ready for the characters while doing the world building on the side, and doing it on the streaming, and also we've been having a little more silly streams, like playing things like most likely to tier lists.
Yeah, so I saw one of those the other day.
Well, so you know, most likely to. Yeah, go ahead.
Tell me about this new race before we get too far away from it, because I'm fascinated. What is it?
So with that, I've been really fascinated with Appalachia and like cryptids. So I've come up with my version of a Sasquatch. It's called the Lonely Folk, and the Lonely Folk they originate in this part of the world. It doesn't have to be, you know, it could be just a race and a standalone, but each biome has a different fur color, and with that fur color, they have different cantrips, like starting cantrips that they can use, right? Mostly damage, some aid, and they are like Bigfoot. They're like, just think of like, in my mind, they're like backwoods Bigfoot, like just hillbilly Bigfoot, big feet.
Because in the real world mythology, you've got the Yeti and the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot, and a few others that are all like basically similar or the same, but just from different biomes. Like, so I can see that working really well.
Yeah, nice. So in like the next month, we'll be doing Simon will be doing the art for it, and then we'll have it kind of like all presented to the community, and so they can, if they're interested in playing it, they don't have to play it in our setting. It's just play it like that. And so that's where I've been at with this you know, it's very much like, remember people are always like, I swear I took a picture of Bigfoot, and it's always a blurry picture, right? So blurry, yeah. They have advantage to stealth, because if any in a fogged or like misty area, like you will not be able to see them because they have advantage on stealth checks. Like you just see like a little blur, because it's always like that. I
did a similar thing. I invented a Sasquatch monster stat block for my games once, because when in the Twitch Tales, the interactive game that I run on my channel, it's the main character is a ranger, and so they had the Outlander background to begin with. They were like a hunter kind of a person, and they were doing some sort of celebration to the god of the hunt, and so they were like, oh, let's go hunt some beast, and the bigger the better. And I told them, like, the higher you roll on this survival check or whatever, the higher the quality of beast that you find, which is going to be more it's going to be a better tribute to the god of the hunt. And and I had a table of like all the different things that they could find. If they rolled this, they get that. If they roll this, they get that. Like owlbear and displacer beast and stuff. And then only if they got like a 27 plus or something on the check, they could find a Sasquatch, like a genuine Bigfoot. And of course
awesome.
They did, because they just rolled absolutely amazing, and they had some sort of advantage from being in their favorite terrain or whatever, and they found a Sasquatch, and so I had this like homebrewed stat block for it, and I think I gave it proficient expertise in stealth, so that it had this huge stealth modifier. I think I maybe even gave it the ability to cast blur on itself once a day for the same reason of like the photographs and something. It was very funny. Very good.
I like that. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me, but maybe you can confirm too. But like in the cultural zeitgeist around me, and my whatever's being served to me on YouTube and everywhere is a lot of cryptid stuff is coming back in. And it's funny because when I was making this next arc, I was like, God damn it, is everyone just doing like cryptid stuff now? Like,
I think that's more
which is
that
a beneficial thing.
I think that's more that you are researching cryptid stuff for your arc, and so it's the algorithm's like, let's serve him more of this, because I'm not seeing a bunch of cryptid stuff. That's probably because I'm a huge skeptic and I'm very cynical about all of that stuff, and so I'm like, just roll my eyes at it whenever I see the cryptid stuff that I do see is usually a stitch from somebody who's debunking it or like poking fun at the guy who's like the flat Earth or whatever, and then somebody's debunking. I
would love to have a Rob Hartley skeptic in that like campaign as like a I don't know.
Yeah.
The challenge itself is how do you do like a cryptid, so like a little bit of a spoiler is that the next arc would be a very heavily cryptid theme, and the challenge for myself is in a high fantasy world, what the hell is a cryptid?
What the hell is a cryptid? Because everything exists and there's evidence for it, and people have fought it, and so you just know about these things. It's one of the reasons why I am always reminding myself of that whenever there's like a mystery and you're like, oh, somebody's been drained of blood, and you find a body in the middle of the street that's got 2 holes in its neck. Everybody in town would be like, oh shit, there's a vampire. Because in the real world where vampires don't exist, we still all know the lore of vampires. We still know that they have to be invited in, and they're resistant to this, and they damaged by this, and garlic is bad for them. Like, if we know these things about fictional monsters, if you're in a world where those monsters actually exist, you sure as hell would tell your kids about these stories. There'd be stories about how to avoid werewolf curses, and how to avoid a roper, and be careful when there'd even be like sing-song nursery rhymes that tell you about how to always remember to look upwards when you're walking through a cave in case a piercer drops on you. Like, everybody would know all the monsters that are around them. So then, how the hell do they have a cryptid that's like, nah, I don't believe in that one?
Bring around the roper, you know? And that was a challenge that I was trying to like figure out, and I think I have an explanation for it on what that would mean in their world. Sorry, our world. You see how much I play D&D? It's like, it's our world, right?
It's our world,
yeah. So we'll see where that goes for sure.
I have I've never played him yet, but I've always wanted to play the idea of like an atheist in D&D, because I feel like in a world where gods are tangible, real things that have actual, everyday reactions, and there are clerics wandering around that can just divine intervention, ask for the gods to whatever. They can bring down guardians of faith and all this. Yeah, being an atheist in that world would like be being a flat earther in this world, where like you just have the blinkers on so far that you're just ignoring all evidence to the contrary, and you're just able to just cherry pick the data that you need, and you can just be like, well, the gods exist, but they're just not gods. They're just powerful wizards that are illusionists and stuff, and like. To play a character that's so in denial about something that's so obvious, like what
gave you that? What gave you that magic power there? Oh, this holy relic. Yeah. That's because he imbued it with magic. That's what makes sense. He imbued it with
magic. Look, I also have a magic power. Look, and uses magic missiles out of a wand. He's like, look, it's a wand of magic missile. I can also create fire.
Yeah, big whoop. I don't know why I went with an Alex Jones voice, but
I know why you went with an Alex Jones voice.
Yeah.
I think we all know. So, what's your main primary focus for D&D with me at the moment? You said there was a rebrand coming, like as in like new name and everything.
Yeah, that is actively being done, and I do love D&D, and I do think also we should be able to kind of branch out. And I always felt weird having D&D with me do other things, right? And other TTRPGs. Yeah, right.
I very early on was smart enough to pick up on that and went because I was originally Robert Hartley DM on Twitch, and within like the first few months I was like, actually, I'm going to switch that to Robert Hartley GM at the first opportunity I can, just in case I ever want to branch away from Dungeon Masters. DM is trademark, GM is not. And
so where were you?
Able to do other games.
Where were you when I was making this thing?
I didn't know you till Gen Con, man.
Yeah. So like when the OGL came out and stuff, like we don't have to go down that route, but like I was like, maybe I need to change some stuff. And you look into the legality of having D&D, and it's not bad, but it's not good either. I don't think I don't want to publish. One of my goals is to publish, if there was interest in my world, to kind of Patreon out portions of my content in a TTRPG agnostic version, right? And so you can play it wherever you want and whenever you want. And so there is a full rebrand going in, and it's the names being done, the artist started, and the music's being made by friends and stuff. So that's the big thing that's taking up a lot of my time, and that's why we're just doing the Monday streams and maybe a Wednesday stream here and there. But that is the big focus, because I want to be able to showcase some of the things. I got Morkborg, I got Shadow Dark, I've got the One Ring, Avatar Legends and stuff that I want to actually play. That
you
I don't
excited?
know.
You excited for the Avatar, the live action one? It's like out today or tomorrow or something.
It was out last night, and I watched 2 episodes. And as my partner and I are very adoring fans of the live action, we're like, wait a second. The live action of the anime, we're like, wait a second. I don't know.
Is it?
This shouldn't jive like this.
And I need to temper my expectations, because I'm like, I have not watched the movie that doesn't exist.
No, we don't. No,
no, but we don't talk about that. Is it like it? I thought about, I'll binge watch the anime again, because it's been years since I've seen it, so maybe I'll binge. And then I was like, no, I should watch the live action without having refreshed my memory of the good thing, because then I'm less likely to be like disappointed when things aren't the same.
So Rob, all I'll say is that, like, the movie that shouldn't be named, the show, the anime, right? Okay. I don't think anything's going to beat the anime.
No, I don't think so.
What did I say after the second episode? I turned to Lauren, and I was like, Lauren, I kind of want to just watch the anime again.
It would be amazing if Netflix spent all this money to basically just make a trailer for the anime. they're just promoting this anime that they have no stakes in.
The thing that makes me that was funny too is that they released it on Thursday in the North America, and it said then there was a news article, because the creators of the show, the anime, left halfway through because of some script changes and stuff. They just announced that they're doing a continuation of The Last Airbender with the Aang and Sokka and Katara in their 20s and 30s. Okay. And I'm like, I don't know. Can we just leave stuff? Can we just not have a good time?
Can we just leave things alone to be good?
Yeah.
So that you don't taint everything with how it ended with this terrible thing. Like Lord of the Rings, some of the best movies, hands down. Like, not even best fantasy movies, just some of the best movies that humanity has ever made is the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Incredible storytelling, incredible cinematics, incredible characters, and just everything about it. You can look at the costume, you can look at the makeup, the special effects, the visual effects. They are incredible movies. And then they went, let's shit all over that with The Hobbit. Let's make this money grabbing this horrible cash grab of 3 movies that are absolute garbage, and just shit all over the legacy. Game of Thrones, some of the best TV that I've ever seen for the first 6 seasons or so, and then they went, let's shit all over it with the last 2 seasons. The Star Wars the original Star Wars trilogy, incredible films, incredible stories. Then they went, let's go and just take a big old dump over it. Everything's just let's keep milking it until it's dead.
Rob, have you seen Spaceballs?
I have, yes. Yeah.
So Yogurt's. You know what Yogurt says when he's like, "I'll see you in Spaceballs 2, the quest for more money." That's exactly all it is, right? So it's so
things
sad.
Can't just be left to be good, which is one of the things that I think is the big divider between British TV and American TV. Is that British TV will go, look at these 6 episodes of this incredible thing that then has this cult following and people beg for it to come, and then and for a while it was like Spaced and Faulty Towers, and I think I've heard that Faulty Towers is actually coming back as a thing as well, because they're like, yay, nostalgia. But it's like, just leave it as 6 episodes of something amazing. We don't need to remake it.
It's funny because it's like you have a direct view into my past. I literally was talking to this about with Lauren about this because she's watching a show on Apple TV that it's in partnership with BBC. I forget the name of it, and I'm like, why? You look at Avatar and everything's very rushed, spoiler, in the live action, and then you look at that and you're like, how can they get storytelling down to an art in 6 episodes versus the hodgepodge mess that you see at Netflix and stuff. But it's infuriating. It is.
And also there's so much stuff where I'm like, and I just pretend that part doesn't exist.
Yes.
I did Lost was a great TV series in my opinion until the end of season 3, and then in season 4 they introduced like time travel and stuff, and it starts getting like, what the fuck are you doing with this? And so I just kind of ignore that the last 3 seasons exist. Dexter is the same. Dexter's a fantastic premise for a TV show, and it's pretty good until season 4, and then season 5 goes a bit crap, so you just like ignore the last half. So much stuff is just like continued past its expiration date.
Did you watch the reboot? Not the reboot, but like the continuation that they did?
Was it
that
good?
One? I forget, and they try to right a lot of the wrongs from the final. I forget the name of it, but it was a decent story actually, and they did it, and they're like, "That's it, we're done." I don't mind that, as opposed to like just beating that horse, till it's dead. And then past that.
So, I don't know what got us onto ranting about all of that, but let's just nerd rage in general. Just Robert Rants is kind of my brand. What does the future hold for you? Actually, before we get into future, I just want to remind the audience, I have been skim reading the chat as we go, but if you want to ask us a question that we'll actually answer and it doesn't get lost in the miasma of text, make sure to redeem the ask a question redemption. It goes into a list, and then Peter and I will answer the questions all at the end. But let's sort of round out by talking about the future of D&D with me. I think we got into talking about it because we were talking about your rebranding and getting away from Dungeons and Dragons in general.
Well, the spoiler, the next arc will be in Dungeons and Dragons as well. But aside from that, like I feel like Dungeons and Dragons will be like a mainstay for us, but the next arc will be coming, and that'll be a little bit more in tone. It'll be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more comedic at times. But we kind of went down the body horror route with the first arc, and I kind of want to ease on the brakes and have some more laughable moments, and that's where I hope Arc 2 starts. And so that's the first thing that's on the imminent horizon along with the rebrand. I have some ideas for a one shot that I'm currently putting together now. I did for Gary Con something called the Cleanup Crew, which was you are a cleanup crew of people hired by a lich to go clean up a dungeon after a failed thing. So I want to do Cleanup 2, the Cleanup Crew 2, and we'll. Yeah, pretty much. And I want to kind of do that and do that on the channel there. And then I was thinking, and this is a big endeavor, but I really want to do it. It's a Shadow Dark tournament, because Shadow Dark is very much like bring multiple characters and die, and like because you're going to die. Right. And it's like a dungeon run. You're hired by all these people, kind of like a death race sort of deal. And who gets the furthest? And the whole idea would be, people who we bring on to the one shot. The winner would be someone who didn't die as much and have multiple characters sub in.
That's cool.
So, and there would actually be a gift on it. So that's where we're at right now with
I like that.
With there. Yeah.
I take it from us not mentioning the new name of the rebrand that you're not announcing it yet.
No, because there's actually a lot of stuff going into it. There's a lot of stuff going into it. I have a friend of mine who, if you see the Crystal Arc opening, like the opening trailer, we had something from Epidemic Sound, and he overdid a guitar because I'm like, I kind of want like 80s style riff on it too. Right. I will hint that it is triumphant. That's the spoiler I'll give. Okay. But that's it. But there's a big announcement going with it.
And everything that everything you have currently will just be renamed as the thing. So if they follow you on Twitch, they follow you on YouTube, follow you on Instagram, they won't need to refollow you or refind you elsewhere.
Everything is reserved and ready for the Switch. So
as soon as you're listening to this, either if you're live right now listening to it, or in the near future when you are watching this, go and find D&D with me, because you'll know what to look for. Go and follow, and then you'll already be followed when the name change happens. Otherwise, you'll be watching this and going, I can't find them. Like
there will be something that will, like, we worked out, like formerly D&D with me for the first little bit, right? And then kind of phase that out as that goes in. But it's a weird thing, having to rebrand in a content sort of creation way, because there's a fear of like losing viewers and stuff. And hey, totally. It is what it is. We'll figure it out.
If you send me the new name after you've rebranded and stuff, then I'll try and remember to put in the description of my YouTube of this, or maybe in the podcast or whatever. Like, I'll try and put a link to the new name, so that if people are watching this well into the future, and they want to come back and find where you are and stuff, then they can at least still find you, hopefully.
I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you.
And final sort of deep future question, like blue sky 10 years from now, where are you hoping this new thing will be? Like, what's your intention with it? You want to be like a full-time production studio making D&D content, or you want to be kind of still just doing it as a side thing, or where are you hoping to be?
I think it would be, well, no, I know I would love for it to be more than just D&D, more than just TTRPG. My heart kind of lays in just content creation, and seeing, I've been on Careful Cantrip quite a bit, and I've made myself look fairly silly on Careful Cantrip with doing things, and it's all about just enjoying.
Careful Cantrip is the least silly place I know. I don't know what you're talking about. They never make their guests do silly things.
No, but it's, and also I do it on. I don't. I think for me is not taking yourself too seriously, because you got to enjoy yourself. But so I would like, and I've talked about this with my channel artist. We're as he's coming in a little bit more, we're looking at bringing this out to more of a multimedia thing, and him being an artist, we're looking at ways to kind of tell stories. And I very much would like to be, other than TTRPG, is a storyteller within the world that we have. And that could be through multiple facets, right? Like, I was on the imminent horizon, I'm looking at doing like a briefing of what Aslos, the world that I have, is, and the gods and the story there, to kind of get people primed for the next season, the next arc. But that's going to develop into something bigger. We wanted to do we're going to do it, books and stuff and stories, where we want to do that if everything's right in the future.
Nice. I love it. How did you get to know Careful Cantrip? That's the sort of mutual friend that introduced the two of us.
Funny, the channel I was on previously, we had the person that was running there, we did a lot of they did a lot of the networking. It's terrible. I need to get better with it. I'm terrible at networking. But after I had that had kind of went on the wayside, folks from Careful Cantrip reached out to me, just say, hey, what's up, what are you still doing, kind of thing. And that's where the friendship kind of really grew from there. And I talked to quite a few folks from Careful Cantrip, like almost daily now, where we live relatively in the same area ish. Like, no, not relatively, sorry, that is, we're in the same province. It's just,
when you're talking about a continent the size of North America, if you're in the same city, you're, even in the same province, you're like,
it's close.
It's close. We're close enough. We were excuse me. We were looking at the travel that we're going to be doing later this year. My partner AJ and I from Winter Sales. We were looking at traveling across across North America after Gen Con. Are you going to Gen Con this year?
It's up in the air right now.
Depends on the little goblin.
It's funny, yeah. That's what I call him, the little goblin. Little goblin is going to be 9 months, and I don't know if it's going to be fair to my partner.
I'm gonna disappear for a week.
She loves that stuff, but she's like, "What am I going to do in Indianapolis for the rest of the day?" I'm like, nothing. It's all D&D that day. It's all TTRPG. So
whether or not I say we're going to Gen Con, and afterwards we're like a month later, my brother's getting married in the UK, and I was like, I'm not flying all the way back to New Zealand and then flying out to the UK again. Like, it's pointless. I'll just stay out and travel North America a bit. And so we're looking at where to go, and I've got like a map that's just got a bunch of pins just stuck into it of all of the places where I know people are, and I'm like, Toronto, we've got Dave up there, we've got so and so over in New York, and so and so in San Francisco, and we're looking back, going, where do we go for that month? So we've started toying with ideas, and we might be coming up to Toronto, so we'll have to meet up and do a little Insta reel or something together.
Yeah, I'll take you to Stormcrow Manor. Check that out. It's a fantastic place. I mean, been But yeah, I joked with Careful Cantrip like that. It seems D&D or TTRPG content creation is a very much a Canadian export at the moment, because the amount of people I am meeting, and I'm like, oh my god, you're all Canadian, or you're on the other side of the world in Australia or New Zealand. Those are the only, I haven't met too many in between.
It's just so what you're saying is D&D is a colonies thing. it's a former British colonies thing.
Listen,
I wonder if there's a lot of Indian D&D content creators as well. So thanks for joining me for this. Let's start asking some questions before you disappear. Then let's have a little
thank
look.
you for.
Let's open up the requests list. So it's still not too late. If you want to ask questions, you can get them in now, and Peter and I will get to them. All right. So starting with Disciple an hour ago. Disciple asked, "This is a weird question, but I've made a world where dwarves are evolved from goats." I love it already. Okay. Have made stat blocks for the different types of dwarven evolutions from said goats, but I'm having a hard time tying it to my overall story so that my characters can meet all these different dwarves. It's a dwarven-only world as well. I don't know why, it's what the players wanted. Do you have any advice for a fairly fresh DM on how to integrate but not railroad? How to integrate but not railroad is a good one. I think tying, like, just having options for story is a way to feel like it's not railroaded. Having like a quest board of things, not exactly, I'm not speaking literally, but the equivalent of a quest board that is like, you could do this, this, or this. Here's your three quests that you can go on. That way the players feel like they've got choice. They feel like they've got agency. If you do that, then I would recommend, as we were talking about before, Peter and I, having the other quests that they don't choose still progress without them. Because one of the things I didn't like about one of the modules, one of the only times I've ever actually run a published module rather than my homebrew setting, was Dragon of Ice Spire Peak. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's kind of like a starter. It's kind of like the alternative to the Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's a very starter module. And it is literally a quest board in a town where they've got 3 quests. And after they've chosen one of them, they choose another one. And after they've chosen the second one, 3 more quests appear, but the first one remains. And then after they've chosen 2 of those new quests, another 3 appear on the board. And so it's very video gamey. How it's written is, whenever they get around to choosing any of those quests, if they want to grind out before fighting the final dragon, they can go back and take all and finish all of the quests and get all of the gold and the rewards and stuff for it. But one of those starting 3 quests is, go to a particular dwarven mine and warn them that there's a dragon just moved into the area. And when I was running the game, I was running it for kids, like 10-year-olds at the time, and they did the other 2 starter quests, then they moved on to the middle quests, and then they moved on to the big quests, and then they wanted to grind out, so they went back and started doing the middle quests again, and once they'd finished those, they went back and finally, after all of the quests, went back to let's do the quest where we won the dwarves are in the area. And how it's written is, they get to the thing, the dwarves are like, oh, thanks for letting us know. Also, while you're here, would you mind helping us clear out the mine of bad guys and blah, blah, blah. There's a little mini quest. But I had them go back, and I was like, the dwarves have been eaten by the dragon long ago. Because you didn't warn them there was a dragon in the area. That was like, it's not. This isn't a video game. So I would recommend, if you do give them a few options, just make sure that you are aware that anything they don't choose, it, by nature of it being a real living world, those things should continue and have consequences.
Yeah. And, Rob said it perfectly, because, like, Rob, I think, and I have kind of a very similar way of, running our games, in that sense that, if you're, I wouldn't always have it be dire and whatever. Let's just say, we're supposed to deliver a cart of something to a merchant, like we're supposed to be delivering these gnomes or something. That cart got overturned, everything got lost there, so now you have to go find where the cart went. Bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, there's some clues that there was bandits that took the stuff from the cart, so now you got to track down the bandits and get the stuff back.
And then it's the goat dwarf people.
And it's the goat dwarf, yeah, exactly. So you can always tie in, anytime that they meet somebody, just make sure to tie in, like, one of these other goat dwarf races. Like, this one's a mountain goat dwarf, and this one's a fainting goat dwarf. And this one, I did the other day work on some homebrew beast stat blocks, and I because I'm just kind of disappointed in the stat blocks of 5e in general, but especially the beasts that are just kind of like,
me too. They're awful.
They're just awful. And so I was like, let's make a stat block for mountain goats and a stat block for like a domesticated goat and a stat block for a fainting goat just because it's very funny. Nobody will want to like wild shape into a fainting goat, but you can polymorph an enemy into a fainting goat and then go boom and make them fall over, and that's very funny.
That's I mean, I think a fainting goat, if you're a druid and you wild shape into that, would be a great distraction. Like trot up like and just like go over and like, oh my god, what happened? And then everyone sneaks in. But yeah, like, I think as DMs we do have it's world building overload. I like to call it too, right? We're too hard in our world building that we're like, it has to be like this, right?
Yeah.
So even when you're planning your sessions, that seeps in. And here's the spoiler: the players don't know. You have a preconceived notion that they know. They're gonna be like, they're just gonna enjoy it the whole time around, you know, unless they've read, if you're doing from an adventure book and they've read it, and then but we don't do that. and then you should be changing it anyway, because if you're starting to pick up on the fact that your players are pre-reading the module that you're running, that's kind of shitty behavior on them, and you can mess with them by being like, you can test whether they're pre-reading the module by moving a secret door and having them go, I'm going to investigate the walls for secret doors. And then they spend a good 10 minutes being like, are you sure I don't see anything with my 23 perception? You're like, no, there's no secret door here. They're like, they don't want to outright come out and say, but there should be a secret door. I read the module. Yeah, they're like, I got to keep looking. Or Strahd is no longer a vampire, he's a werewolf. Yeah. And you mess with them guys changing some things, moving some stuff around. So hopefully that helped, Disciple. I love that your dwarves are all goats and that it's an entirely dwarf world. The fact that it's an entirely dwarf world will make it so much easier to introduce these dwarves. Don't ram them down people's throats, but like just have them as part of the world. Have the NPCs that they're meeting being different dwarf races, and just have them sort of come about it naturally, essentially, to discover these things naturally. DM Dave CC, whoever that is, I think they're new to my channel, asks, what is the average size of an immovable rod for a North American wizard? Asking for a friend in game. Funny, because recently the averages have gone down, unfortunately, due to material shortages. So it used to be around 6. Now I think I believe it's at 5. Yeah. So the average. Yeah. So the funny thing is, the average size of an immovable rod is around 5.5. But the average size for an immovable rod for a wizard who is specifically researching the average size of an immovable rod is about 3.5. Yeah. Yeah, because they're usually extended. They usually go on. If you look at the search history of wizard, and by search history I mean the books that are on the table in the library, the ones that are on the left where they've finished them. They usually they start from like average sizes of immovable rods, and then they move on to extendable rods and where to get extendable rods, and do extendable rods that you find from supplemental websites. Do they work? Yeah. Oh wait, I just actually got an email. That's interesting that you bring that up, Rob. I just got an email on movable rod enhancement. I don't even don't know where that came from. I don't know why would they. Who is Califastus the Bold? I don't know. I don't know who that person is. I'll definitely be deleting that email. Yeah, I'll delete it immediately after this. Maritime Gamer TV asks, fun fact. Not a question, a fun fact. We played an Ark Survival, and Peter quickly made an in-game wife Sasquatch. So a question for Peter. Can the lonely folk toss a creature like your beloved tossed you into death multiple times? I feel like absolutely they can. They will. Yeah, so we did play Ark Survival. We're big survival fans there, but it's funny, when I was making the lonely folk, I was thinking about Henrietta, my my Bigfoot wife, but yeah, I was like, what does Henrietta Survival do? The dinosaur one? Yeah, but they have Sasquatch in it. They have Sasquatches in what? Yeah. Yeah, so now guess what, Rob? The skeptic and your mind must be blown, because they exist. It's real. It's real with the dinosaurs. That is real. So I must have. Yeah, I stand corrected. Everything. I know. I'm gonna go out and get some crystals. That'll kill you. Yeah. So your beloved wife Sasquatch in this game tossed you into death multiple times. Yeah, their special ability is they can pick you up and throw you. So I did put into like the lonely folk a little bit of a, they do have advantage on a lot of, constitution and strength. Things, Yeah, but it was interesting because I was thinking maybe doing it by biome, because there's a swamp biome, and there's this and there's that on top of it, right? Like, but I've nailed down that we're not going to do that because that would just be too customizey. I think, when you're playing a game with a homebrew race, you kind of want to just have little flourishes of color here and there, not a whole rebranding or repainting.
I think one of the things people get wrong about homebrewing races is that they try to put too much into the race. If you go back and look at all of the races that exist, all the official races, they all have a bunch of like flavor stuff that doesn't matter to the mechanics at all, like how long the race lives, what the alignments tend to be, that sort of stuff. Like their walking speed is usually 30, sometimes 35 or 25. It changes very little. And then the things that actually change about any race are like 3 things maybe. Whether they have dark vision or not is just like a toggleable. Do they have it?
Yeah.
And then if they have flight, then that's pretty much all that they get. Flight and some claws maybe. If they have some sort of natural weapon like the bite or claw attack or a tail attack, something horn attack, and then like one extra thing that's like a little bit of like, oh, this is a very niche thing, but when it comes up, it'll be interesting. There's not a lot to races.
That's the problem. Sometimes I over-engineer, and I shout out to DM Dave, whoever that person is. I did throw him like version 1 of this, and he did call out good things, and it's and that's why it's good to do homebrewing and stuff on stream as well, because you'll have multiple people all in one place saying, maybe about this and that. I mean, there's information overload at times. We have to kind of pick and choose and alter that, but with like-minded peers, it's always good to kind of check yourself on things.
For sure. I've not done many homebrewed races yet, but it's something that I really want to do because I'm just sort of homebrewing more and more and more of the game, and so eventually I'll take a look back and like Theseus's boat, I'll be like, oh, this is not D&D anymore. I'll just be like, oh, I've changed to this is the same. It's just a different thing. So I've come up with an entirely new like dwarven race that I call dwargs, that are very dwarven-like, but I've given them like tremor sense and come up with a whole different backstory, different lore for them and stuff. So like one at a time, I'm gonna switch them up. Also, when I thought about like the origin of my world and like what were the earliest species that were created by the gods, I've like decided there's not enough plant people that you can play as, and insect people and like fish people, and so I want to homebrew a lot more of that stuff eventually.
Yeah, like. I that's the same thing too. Like I have a merchant capital that's very much based on Italy and like Italy and Greece, and I'm like, this is in the Amalfi Coast is very mountain, like it's mountainous and cliffside. I'm like, there needs to be like goat people. I know there are goat people if you look at like satyrs, but I'm talking legitimate goat people that are just bipedal goats. I agree with you though too. Like there's too much flying. There's not enough. There's just not enough, man, and
so many of the races, especially newer races, are just like, why did we need an owlin? That was just that's just a reflavored Aarakocra. Like
I know we have gnolls, but why don't we have like a Saint Bernard type of race, right? And like full transparency, my Lonely Folk is the actual first made race that I've done ever and want to put out there for a playtest, right? And same with all my homebrew monsters that we do on like Monster Monday is I put it in the Discord and people use them in their games and I get feedback on them. And it's just fun to use. It's good.
Speaking of homebrew, Fancy asks, what is your favorite homebrewed thing that you've made and how did your players use it / break it?
So one of my favorite, it's a twofold question, but my first one that is in recent memory is a monster called the Puddle Jumper. And Fey-inspired creature starts off small, but it grows to the size of the water it's in. So if it's in a puddle, it's small. If it's in a pond, it's medium. And if it's in a lake, it's large. So... And it kind of scales from there. And my idea is I haven't gotten to use it yet because we just recently made it. And that's something that I really liked is imagine fighting this or a few of them. And you're like starting in a lake or not even in a pond, or you're trying to capture it. Like that guy's like, oh, my puddle jumper got lost. And it's like a mix between a frog and a snake. And then it jumps into the pond and you're like, oh, it's medium. And then you look down, there's like a waterfall going into the water. So now it's a timed event where you're like,
you're like, oh god,
no. Like this stuff like that. I think that'd be great. But
Yeah,
they wouldn't know.
It's
until
just
that.
going over a waterfall, and it's just like immediately into the ocean, and you're like, no, oh god, we can't unleash this thing.
At that point,
Yeah, you're like, we can't unleash this thing. We're gonna unleash a kraken. Oh god.
Yeah, it just
That's
turns
cool.
out to
I like
be
that.
Homebrew items, I haven't done too much honestly with homebrew items because it's weird. We haven't strayed too far away from creating things that aren't like, I mean, we made like a vine whip because our warlock who used dual whips, there's not much difference to whips, so I had to start making things like with like a little bit of damage on it, damage modifiers and whatnot. And there's but mostly my bread and butter right now is at monsters, and it's been a lot in the Feywild, believe it or not.
I just the other day made I made it ages ago, but then I just the other day showed it to Cinderblock Sally on YouTube, homebrew guy. I had him on my channel just talking about homebrew stuff, and I showed him a feat that I made ages back for a guy who wanted to be like dual wielding whips, and we just were like, a D4 whip, it's just boring. Kind of nothingness. It's just you're not getting much damage. So I homebrewed a feat that was called Whipmaster, and it was like prerequisite had to be that you had to be proficient with a whip. But then if you did, then you could increase the damage die to a D6. You could attack with it as a reaction of opportunity when people enter your space. Instead of doing damage whenever you hit with it, you can choose to knock them prone or push them back or something instead. Like you can grapple them with the whip if you whip it around them, and I give them all these like supplemental things. It's like you're not going to be doing a shit ton of damage, but you can like Indiana Jones it over something to hold your weight and stuff like that. So it was like a feat that allowed you to be like, if you've got in mind that you want to do cool things with a whip, and D&D just doesn't have it, take this feat.
Actually, to kind of go back, I was just thinking through the stuff we have made in the past. I was thinking from a video game mindset. If you've ever played World of Warcraft, there was tier sets,
right?
And I was thinking of doing, and I made one only for Fathomless Warlock, and it would start off, you would get an item and a piece of the item, and it would add a little bit to like your Eldritch Blast or something like that. It would give it a flavor, color, and stuff, but the quest would keep going on, and then eventually you would get a third piece of armor, but it'd be a weapon, and it would require you to cut your hand off because your hand would now be a hook. Like you turned like full like sea pirate mode. Like your hand would be a hook, and it would also be a tentacle that would whip out and grab you and stuff. And I think if we're gonna look back at our video game knowledge and stuff, I do think tier sets would be a great boon because it also creates a story that you're gonna have to do between you, if you're gonna use Fathomless Warlock, between you and your patron. And you have the option: do I cut my hand off and like fully give myself to this patron, or do I reject it a bit? But you still have a little bit of the benefits of being a Fathomless Warlock and going down that route.
There's a miniatures game, Star Wars miniatures game that I love to play called Imperial Assault, and one of the between each mission you can you've accrued some credits through the mission, then you go to a shop and you buy new gear, and then you do the next mission and stuff. And so one of the things you can buy between missions is called something like the Bionic Arm, and it's like you chop off your arm and you lose some hit points, but you gain more endurance, which is like there's two different sort of resources in the game, and having to make that like choice for your character to be like, you lose hit points but you gain endurance, is the toss off going to be worth it? It's going to be great. Toss up, not toss off, different thing.
Either way, it will be great.
It's going to be harder to toss off if you've lost your arm though, and you've got Bionic Arm. Maybe there's a setting on it.
Oh
god! Someone called DnDwMe, I think. Oh no, wait, DM Dave CC has asked, within the TTRPG Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks.
Two-weapon fighting is a very complicated rule. It's not that complicated if you're smart. With that said, who would win in a fight? Billy Zane from the Oscar-worthy 1996 film The Phantom, or any version of Billy Bob Thornton?
Great question. If we're looking at Billy Bob Thornton from Bad Santa, no. But if we're looking at Billy Bob Thornton from any other movie, I don't know. I don't know who either
of these people are or the movie that is referenced. I'm going to go sideways with this question and say a different Billy. I reckon Billy Connolly would beat them both.
Billy Connolly.
Billy Joel, Billy Connolly. I reckon they'd win.
Okay. If it
Billy
now
Goat.
this is the thing.
I reckon a Billy Goat would win as well.
A Billy Goat, yeah. Billy Zane in The Phantom would win in this, but Dave, if you did ask if it was Billy Zane from Titanic, would have lost. And if you are curious about that, please join my TED Talk on my Instagram Live, where I will.
Who is Billy Zane? I have seen Titanic, so maybe I'd know that. Who is he in that?
He is who. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the main actress's name. Was gonna marry. He's the. Because like in The Office, Dwight makes like a real man makes his own luck. Billy Zane, Titanic, and that always sits with me.
Billy the Kid obviously is gonna win because he's a gunslinger. Billy the Kid,
of course,
very
artificer,
infamous artificer, gunslinger. So Billy the Kid is my answer to the question, DM Dave. Thank you for the 2-weapon fighting, and also Billy the Kid, 2-weapon fighting.
Gotcha.
DM Dave CC, whoever that is, asks another question. Question for Peter. What's the new channel name? He asked this at the exact time, right after I said, so you're not going to reveal the channel name? And he said no. And then he said, what is the channel name? Because he's a prick. Why do we?
I actually think Raina knows it, though. I do think Raina knows it.
Is Raina going to out it?
We do bounce off. I hope not. We do bounce off each other every now and then. And even Nate might even know Maritime Gamer TV in the chat. So I don't know. You can ask people. Nate probably doesn't remember. Yeah, keep it shush.
The Ally one, finally somebody who's not DM Dave, asks, I watched a video about the art of how DMs blow their players' minds or something like that. What are your tactics or tips? Asking as a brand new DM. Tactics and tips for how to blow your players' minds. Whew.
That's tough because I personally, when I, being cinematic in a way, like it's the explanation of things. It's the build up. It's the tone of your voice when you're rising into a climatic moment or like a surprising moment. That's where you're going to blow their minds, or you're bringing back something that they don't even remember, right? Like a long lost character they thought was dead, or a chieftain that they remember being this big badass, and he just comes in. And he's like, let's tussle and help fight, kind of thing, right? It's always big. Event changing moments for me. I think that's how I wow them.
I think the question almost is like presuming the result. Like you shouldn't. Your goal shouldn't be like, oh, in my prep, what my focus is to blow my players' minds. It should be your focus is like to make this amazing story, or to have this incredible scene, or to come up with the description that's going to be super immersive, or to come up with an NPC that feels really realistic, or like to have a story hook that's like that they can't possibly refuse, even though they would hate more than anything to have to go on this particular quest, but they know that they have to because of XYZ reason. Like those things should be your focus, and then by doing so you blow their minds. Like you come up with something that's like a big reveal or a twist or something that blows their mind. But I feel like aiming for blow somebody's mind is kind of like an actor in a scene, and we've all seen it done really well and really badly. An actor in a scene like trying to cry at a funeral or something, and you can tell when the actor's goal for themselves was I must produce tears because that's good acting, versus the much more interesting thing to watch, the much more emotional thing to be invested in is to not cry, is to attempt to not cry. Like if the actor's goal is don't cry in this scene, try hard not to cry in this scene, then it's much more interesting to watch somebody trying not to cry. I think somebody, it was Bryan Cranston, a fantastic actor, and I saw him in an interview once saying like a character in a comedy series, and it's different for comedy sketch shows and stuff like SNL and live things, but comedy series and he was talking about Malcolm in the Middle. He says no matter how ridiculous their situation is, they cannot know that it's funny. The character cannot know that it's funny. The character cannot laugh, because if the character laughs, the audience doesn't have to. And he says the same with emotional scenes. He said, if you're in a really emotional scene and your character cries, then the audience no longer has to. It's much more interesting to see them trying not to. And it's the same with dungeon mastering. Like if it's clear that you're trying to blow your players' minds, they're just going to be like, Jesus, this DM's trying hard.
Yeah, and and that it is true there. And then Rob, that's the secret part that I was missing there, right? Like, I admittedly, at the end of our campaign in episode 24, when we were doing the epilogues, I got very emotional. But it's because of this culmination of finishing things and asking our elf character, how do you say goodbye to those who don't live as long as you, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the Insta clip of that, and it was like, ooh, that's some.
Yeah, but you see the reaction there, right? When you hit with hard questions like that, and they're like, oof. That's when you blow their minds, right? And I've had my mind blown just because one of my players' backstories, they had explained why they don't have emotion anymore, and they removed their emotion, and they're Warforged, and they explain it, and it's gut wrenching because he's so serious with it. And you're right, I know Bryan Cranston brings it up because of the roller skating episode. If you ever watch that one, and he's just like dead serious about the whole thing, and that is a good description of a great actor, right? He's like just knowing that I have to play it serious.
Yeah. Yep. Don't play to the comedy. Play against it. And the comedy happens because of that. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Maritime Gamer asks, Peter, best starter Pokemon to prepare a good Italian pasta.
Easy, Squirtle, because fire's readily available. If you got to boil a pasta on the run, Squirtle has the water. So any water-based Pokemon
makes sense. I'll take it. Disciple asks, follow-up question. I'm stuck on the fainting goat dwarf stat block. I'm torn between that if they get surprised in combat, they have to roll a con save to keep from fainting, or if I just want it to be a thing that can happen if anyone spooks them. Also, thank you so much for any tips. Only downside is I have to keep rewinding to copy it down. This will become so after my short rest stream is live, I put it up on my, thankfully Fancy does the editing and puts it up on my YouTube, and then we strip the audio from it and it goes up on my podcast as well. So you can find it again and again in future if you need to revisit these tips. So the fainting goat dwarf stat block, it's, if you're talking about it being just for like NPCs of the world, then that's one thing. You can just have it for comedic effect.
Yeah.
If you are talking about like making it a playable race, then it needs to not be something debilitating, otherwise people just will not play it. Also keep in mind that survival of the fittest says that the fainting goats wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for human intervention breeding them specifically. Humans bred fainting goats. And so if they have evolved for some other reason. So that means that by fainting, they are getting some kind of evolutionary advantage, or they're just not getting as much of a disadvantage as they are getting from something else that came with the fainting. So it could be that the main predators, as they were evolving, of this particular goat species, this dwarf goat species, were something that will refutably never touch something that is dead. And there are animals like that. Snakes, for instance. Snakes are one of the only. I used to work at a zoo, so here's a bit of a zoo tangent. It is illegal to feed out a live animal to any captive animal unless the animal does not have a vertebra. Any invertebrate is fair game because they kind of have to draw the line somewhere, and they decided that if you don't have a vertebra, you don't have a complex nervous system, and therefore theoretically you don't feel pain. So they kind of drew the line there. So any animal with a vertebra has a complex nervous system, probably feels pain. It's much grayer than that because octopodes and squids and things are extremely intelligent creatures that probably feel pain, but they have no central nervous system. Getting well far off topic. The exception to the rule that is usually baked in is snakes. Snakes generally will not touch dead animals, and so you have to feed them live animals, or you have to sort of get around it by taking a dead mouse, microwaving it so it's actually got a body temperature, and then like wiggling it on the end of a stick so it looks like it's alive. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump to get a snake to eat a dead mouse, and so usually they sort of lift the rule for animals that would literally just starve otherwise.
Yeah.
So all that to say, maybe their predator of this fainting goat dwarf thing will not eat dead things, and so when they go to bite a goat dwarf and he faints, that was just a natural response that evolved to be like, don't eat me, and then the thing gets bored and leaves away, and then they get up and walk off. So you have to come up with that, like, don't just make it a debilitating thing. When you're coming up with the player character race for fainting goat dwarf, have like, yes, you must make a con save against fainting, but whenever you faint, you get advantage on on something. You get advantage on deception checks or advantage on stealth checks to look like just you blend into part of the rock, or whenever you faint, you have the blur condition suddenly appear around you, so you're harder to hit while you're down, and you grant disadvantage.
Or a wild magic surge if you want to be crazy. Right?
Just
or
something else
like that. Mm-hmm.
Something to make it fun, because otherwise the players picking to play one will do so for like a one shot, but they won't ever choose to play one for like a full campaign. And if they do, they'll probably regret it. So I don't know. Think about something, and I would have it not happen all that often. Have it happen just like when they are surprised in combat, as you say. When they have the surprise condition, they might faint.
Yeah, if you're a DM, maybe like on a roll table, like recharge on a 18 to 20 on the D20 kind of thing, so it gives us more probability that it won't happen. But when it does, the player will faint, and then a noxious gas comes out or something like that.
Yeah. Like they faint, and then there's a fart faint comes out, and then anything within 5 feet of them gets poisoned or something. So then there's a reason why they don't just rush in and kill the guy.
Exactly.
Love it. All right, Mistreatsome asks, "Hey Rob, I remember a while ago y'all talked about starting a parallel campaign for the girls soon." Oh, this is related to me and the Viva stuff. It would eventually interject with the main campaign. Is it still happening? It is still happening. It's already live, so it's already happening.
There you go.
If you backed the Viva La Dirt League Kickstarter, then you have already access to the first episode of it on the YouTube. If you didn't back the Kickstarter, then you have access to it when it goes live on Tuesday night coming. It is coming very soon, Miss Treason. Honeybee360 asks, can you please explain more about Session 0 to a very new person to D&D, both from a GM perspective and a player perspective?
It's funny,
also, are you good for time, by the way? I know I'm over
I'm good.
the time that I requested. Good.
I'm good. No, I will make this time for you.
Thank you.
I was that's at Gen Con. That was I was in a Session 0 panel, right? And as a DM, you have some safety checks you need to go through. You need to make sure everyone's on the same level in terms of what they're expecting from play. That could be something along the lines of, are we doing a adventure just like smash and grab? I want to run into a dungeon and beat a bunch of things up, or I want a big political intrigue. That's something to help you form the idea of the rest of your campaign. Characters, do you know each other? Do you not know each other? Or are we starting up? How are we with resurrection? There's a bunch of things you can go through. There's some not to shamelessly plug, Rob, but I do have a video on it on my YouTube.
Absolutely.
But
this is what this whole thing's about, bro. You can shamelessly look as much as you want. Everybody go check out Peter's video on Session 0 and how to run a good one.
And that was made before like the introduction of a lot of safety tools, which I would definitely put in now too. And also a primer of the world you're going to be doing this in.
100%.
The what we don't allow, no Aarakocra or no bugbears, stuff like that.
Session
you got to look into.
Session 0 is the perfect opportunity to say, hey, my entire world is dwarves that are evolved from goats. That you need to explain that at Session 0 before character creation happens. I also recommend doing character creation, or the very start of it anyway, at Session 0, so people come in with ideas, but they don't actually start formulating characters until they're all sitting around a table. That way you actually can formulate a party, and from the ground up, you're already cohesive. You're already designing your characters to not be stepping on each other's toes, to be filling niches. That doesn't mean you all have to be different classes. You could be a group of 4 monks and still make a party that's not stepping on each other's toes, especially with the variety of subclasses that we've got these days. But you can use Session 0 to just outline everything that you have in mind so that you're on the same page, because almost all conflict comes from a breakdown of communication. Something has not been communicated properly, and expectations were not met. And so people were coming in expecting this, you were coming in expecting that, and you were kind of at odds because you hadn't communicated it. Session 0 is about asking from a player's perspective, asking your DM, is it okay if this happens in the game? Telling your DM, I'm not okay with, I've got a real phobia around anything to do with blood. So can we go real low on the like, let's not have entire arcs about vampires, or like, let's not have overly descriptive gore when we kill an enemy. Let's not describe blood splattering everywhere because I've got a thing about blood. Like, you bringing up to with the Dungeon Master anything you're not okay with, anything you'd like to see in the campaign. Bring up stuff that you enjoy, like I was heavily inspired by the anime so-and-so, and I'd love to have that kind of a story arc for my character. I want to be an anime hero kind of a thing. And then the GM going, oh, this is going to be a gritty realism sort of grim fairy tales kind of thing. I'm not sure how I can gel that character. Maybe shelve that character for another day and come up with another thing. Like, basically, get on the same page. That's what the
Honeybee
is about.
Spoiler, as the DM too, you got to have fun.
Oh, for 100%,
so if you don't like political intrigue, and everyone wants to do political intrigue, it might not be the table for you, unfortunately. But there's going to be more tables that come along, right? So you can always have a little bit of both in there. I remember when I had a session 0 for our last live play was I like adventuring, I like dungeon crawling, and I don't like puzzles. I still put some puzzles in there, but not a lot. But the rest was a lot about adventuring and dungeon crawling. Yeah. So there you go.
The last thing I'll say about advice for session 0s is don't take the name session 0 to imply that it has to be done before the first session and then never again. Like, you should be also having check-in sessions to make sure after several sessions of playing, you're like, can I just check in? Is everybody still okay with the sort of direction this is going? Has there been anything that you didn't like about it so far? And is everybody still having fun with it? Is there anything else that I could be including? That's all from DM's perspective, but vice versa.
State of the games. State of the games. And I have one-on-ones too with them.
Yeah. All right, the last question we have redeemed comes from DnDwMe. In the world-renowned role-playing game typically done on a tabletop called Dungeons and Dragons, brackets, currently in its 5th iteration, close brackets, technically not its 5th iteration, actually, DnDwMe. It's in its 5th edition, but it's in its 10th iteration, because it's had multiple other iterations within there that just don't get included for some reason in the editions. Within the core rulebook, known as the Dungeon Master's Guide, on page 244, they reference rules for an alternative class of paladin known as an Oathbreaker. With that said, do either of you guys know where I left my keys?
You know, Rob, I'm starting to think that this DnDwMe is from is actually an AI chatbot.
I think so, right? They're using I think they might have asked chatbot to write me a question. Someone's asked ChatGPT.
ChatGPT actually went
write me a question for Peter and Rob.
That'd be amazing. But to answer, where are your keys? Yeah, pockets, buddy.
They are. They're in the pocket of the pants you were wearing yesterday.
Not in the Speedo.
No. You don't put keys in that. He puts his socks in there. Down the front. When he used to put them down the back until I told him no. He's got to be down the front for the effect that you're wanting.
Like,
come on, it's a very different effect.
It's a nice cushioning though.
Should we remove them from the chat? No. I don't think they're pretty harmless. Have you checked inside the fridge? It could be, yeah. All right, we are out of questions and out of time. So, one last plug to your stuff, Peter. Who are you? Where can people find you if they've liked your chat today?
Yeah, if you enjoyed today's chat with me, you can check me out on DnDwMe on Twitch. There's a link tree, which I believe is in the chat here. I am a DM, storyteller, world builder, homebrewer, and a bunch of other things on the channel that we do, just weird fun things in terms of, we have an AI chatbot named Pip, who's a kobold, and we have some fun little mini games when we do our world building. But you can check us out there and on YouTube.
The other day I liked the tier table that you did of like the monsters, the most likely to monsters, and you'd roll a random thing like most likely to borrow $5 and not pay you back, and then you rank the monsters exactly of D&D. Yeah, it was very fun.
Yeah,
good stuff.
And then if you want to watch our recent Crystal Arc, which was our live play, that's on the YouTubes. You can check that out.
Nice, very good. And if you hear from Peter's community, I'm Robert Hartley, GM. I'm a full-time content creator for Dungeons and Dragons. I'm most well known for being the DM for a comedy group called Viva la Dirt League, running 2 campaigns now, an all-female one and an all-male one. And we are doing a bunch of D&D Logic skits over on the channel as well. So go check out Viva la Dirt League D&D for most of the work that I do, and then check out Robert Hartley, GM for all of the rest of the work that I do. If you liked my stuff, don't forget to follow. I stream here several times a week. I also have an interactive game called Twitch Tales, where the chat are hive mind controlling the actions of the main character. It's a very fun game, but can be very stressful at times. So as we are looking for someone to raid, have you got anybody in mind that you would like to raid? Because I always like to give the option to my guest.
Oh, Mamma Mia. Let's take a look. Oof. Now this is tough. This is tough. Put me on the spot here. I mean, you just had Cinderblock Sally on there. Why don't we just go bring some love over there?
Yeah, let's raid some Cinder. All right, raid Cinderblock Sally, another D&D content creator, most well known for his YouTube shorts, where he's like a bouncing head around the screen, answering comments and things. He and I think very similarly, and he has a fantastic sense of humor as well. So stick around for the raid and give him our love. In the meantime, we're wrapping up our short rest. I feel like the weather has cleared up. We need to start ushering these. Come on, back into the crates with you. I don't want to get back into the crates. This guy's sword keeps sticking me in the face. Can you at least tell this guy to put his sword away?
I am fine with that, guys. Come on.
Come on. At least put your shoes back on. Your feet stink. Come on.
No, your mother made them for me. Get out of here.
Your mother. Shh, everybody shut up. You're meant to be potatoes. And then we get back on the cart and head off on our journey. Thank you very much for joining me, Peter. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Hey there. I'm talking to you. You rock. Thank you for watching my stuff. Really appreciate it.